So you've got your head there. Wow. Would you believe the average price of a Fife house in 1952 was £1,553? QVT. It really did get me to thinking, Perrie, that, you know, the Jubilee weekend and all the rest of it, and I thought to myself, what was the average price of a house in Fife in 1952? £1,553. Hardly, it's like less than a price of a holiday.
I know, that's a few cucumber sandwiches, isn't it?
For a house. That's mental. I mean, well, what a weekend that was. I mean, street parties, gatherings in parks, purple bunting, egg, cress sandwiches, Union Jack flags, cheese and pineapple and cocktails. Cheese and pineapple and cocktail sticks is good, isn't it?
It is nice, especially when my mum used to do it when we used to be a kid. I used to love it because you used to get like the half of a melon that was covered with the tin foil and then they were all stuck in.
That's right. I still see that now. Cheese and onion, silver skin onions was my thing, yeah.
I prefer the sweet ones though.
And let's not forget the trifle. I mean, the Platinum Jubilee Party, that was it, really. And no decent party was worth it. So we're a quiz or a game of some sort. So if you've got the post-Jubilee blues out there, let me ask you, how much was the average Fife home worth in 1952? And I've probably just given you the answer. I've stole my own thunder. Would you believe? I mean, to start with, let's look at what the average property price is right now. The average property price in Fife right now is £190,180. That's the average price paid for a property in the Fife area in the last 12 months. It is. I mean, let's be honest, though. The multiplier, look at the multiplier, average salary around about 30,000. Multiplier still about 6.5 times. The rest of the UK is about 11 times. We're still about half the price of the rest of the UK, yet the average earnings is almost similar to the rest of the UK as well. It is extremely affordable to live in Fife and have a house in Fife. Yeah.
Affordable and actually an amazing, beautiful place to be as well. I mean, we're talking averages in Fife there, Jim, but I mean, I can go into actually the regions within Fife if you'd like and just give people a feel for what it's like in their area.
Let's go to regions.
Yeah, so if we look at the average price today in the last 12 months, so in Fife it's 190,180. Cooper, it's £214,080.
Wow.
In the East Neuk, it's 276,110.
No surprise.
Yeah, Glenrothes, 142,410.
Still extremely affordable. I've told everybody, Glenrothes is a really great affordability to live in, and it's nice and central as well.
Absolutely. Leavenmouth, I mean, look at all the beautiful beauty we have in Leavenmouth. 153,000 for your average home, and to live somewhere so gorgeous.
There's a thing. Before, Glenrothes used to be average price more than Leavenmouth. So does that tell us that Leavenmouth is on the way up?
I think it does do. I mean, certainly with the sales that we've achieved in the area recently, I think there's, you know, we're constantly kind of promoting community and the events that are taking place and the rail link and all the changes that are happening within that are improving the town. I mean, Diageo's just announced as well, they're putting that big solar panel plant up there as well. So again, creating more jobs, etc. So I think it certainly is an up and coming place. There's a lot more could be done. Of course there is, but I mean, every town is the same, isn't it? But I think it does show that it is up and coming. And needless to say, I mean, out of the kind of region.
Drum roll, St Andrews.
Exactly. Yes,
here we go. Let's go.
It's nearly double or treble. £390,590.
Wow, that's almost 400,000.
Yeah,
that's a mental figure, isn't it?
That is bonkers.
So the other end is Glenrothes. At what price point again?
So Glenrothes price point was 142,410.
And St Andrews about 400,000, which is 3 times that.
That's what I said. It's nearly 3 times.
Jeez, peeps. But I've got to say that, as I said before, Fife is actually a great reflection of the whole of the UK, where St Andrews is almost the London of Fife. And then you've got the other ends of the spectrum, which is a lot lower value. And then you've got 50-50 between rural and urban, and also farming and industrialisation. It's actually a great reflection of what goes on as well, potentially politically as well, because you have different areas that support different, more liberal, conservative, and, that towards the east, the northeast, and, a bit of SNP in there as well. But you also have the other end, which is more Labour and socialist as well, so you see that difference, the divide between the farming and the industrialisation. So it's amazing that Fife actually is a really good reflection of what happens on a grander scale in terms of the UK.
Absolutely, and I think what that does as well in regards to the description you give of what occurs employment-wise within the areas, but also actually it gives you a good view of values within the areas, and actually there's something really in Fife for everybody, isn't there?
Yeah, I would say so, definitely. 1952. Let's go back. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so let's go back. So Sir Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister. Newcastle won the FA Cup.
Wow.
London was covered in the Great Smog. Free prescriptions on the NHS were ended. It cost 1 shilling or 5 pence in new money for a prescription then. King George IV was at the age of 56 and passed away on the 6th of February, meaning Princess Elizabeth, our Queen, took over the big house. So we don't even want to price that one.
I know. Listen, I went down there one time and went, it's all right, it's no for sale. And took a selfie.
So you want to go back to, you're stealing your own thunder about the average Fife home in 1952 then, Jim?
And that's it. £1,553. That's a mental figure, eh?
It is.
That's it. 70 years ago, the average price of a Fife house was £1,553. Today, it's £190,180. That means Fife house prices, a quick tally up, 5 minus 2 minus 4, multiplied by 6. Fife house prices have gone up 121 times higher since 1952. 121 times higher since 1952. That's a crazy figure. And of course, the market's going to crash. I'm sure we're not going to crash back to 1952 prices.
No, I would like to think not. I mean, when you look at the 1952 prices around the areas as well, I won't go into all of the community areas, but to be honest with you, you're roughly in between about 1,200 and that 1,500 in all areas, apart from, of course, St Andrews. Yeah. In St Andrews, even back then, it was 3,198. So St Andrews then was still in the kind of double mark, whereas at the moment, and it's kind of reflective, similar double or treble roundabout. So they're all about the same. So that kind of times number does apply in all of the areas, actually.
Yeah. Over the last 70 years, the country has been subjected to about 4.5% inflation per annum, round about thereabout. That's the thing that you're only talking about. This is what people talk about inflation right now. Oh, inflation right now is affecting us big time. It's like, but if you actually smooth that out over all the period, inflation's only ever been on average over the last 70 years at 4.5% every single year. So as long as on a consistent basis, your earnings are going up at least more than 4.5% every single year, you're kind of inflation proofing yourself all the time on a long-term basis. And this is why I talk about property being actually a really good investment, because you take 4.5%, and I'm doing a wee quick calculation here, and multiply that up. See if I can catch my calculator on my phone. 4.5 times 70 is equals, so 4.5, that's 315%, okay? And 121 times higher is actually 12,000%. Yeah?
Yeah.
So 12,000% and property prices have gone up, and inflation's only gone up in the last 70 years, 352%. And people still believe property is not a good investment.
I know.
Crazy,
I think when you look at it, if we were to follow that train of inflation, the 1952 house price at 1553 on average would be the equivalent to £29,863 today when adjusted on those inflation rates.
Yeah.
And we're clearly seeing that that's not happened, because we've just said the average home is 190,000. So I think that
we're talking,
for argument.
If you look at that 190,180, and if you applied inflation, the 29,863, you've 29,863, you've actually made another £160,000 just out of buying the average house in 1952 and waiting for it to go up in value. You've inflation-proofed your investment, which was £1,553, to the tune of an extra £160,317. And that's taking inflation out of the equation.
I mean, when you look at it in real terms, Fife house prices have increased by 504.8%.
Wow,
that's crazy, isn't it?
And all that time, if you're renting property, you're actually getting paid to wait while the value of the property goes up. That's not even taking into account actual rental income.
Exactly. I mean, because we're just talking about the house. We're not talking about any money that house is making other than its own worth.
So, and that's why some people actually get it straight away about property investment. I mean, I beat that drum every single time. It's a really good thing. However, and let's recap and let's qualify this property investment. And people go, oh, well, that's no fair, and you're taking all these houses. But the reality is the people we house can't actually buy a house. So we're not taking these houses. We're actually giving them to the people that can't actually buy a house, and they need a roof over their head. So we're filling that gap between the lack of availability of social housing, which the government have done away with. It has actually declined the social housing sector by 69% since the 1980s. So social housing stocks dropped by 69%. Private rented stocks going up as a result, and therefore we filled the gap, filled the void, and given people houses and roofs over their head. That's the whole point. It all comes back down to, doesn't it? The government needs to start building a lot more houses, social housing.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, as well as that, though, you need good private landlords, Jim, because that's actually giving people good quality homes to live in that perhaps would not be available to them any other way because they can't source it from local authority.
They wouldn't be really anyway. They wouldn't have at all. Good morning, Andrea. Any questions or any comments? Please feel free to chip in. Anybody else out there, please feel free to chip in as well. So house prices then have increased by the 500% in real terms since 1952. So does that mean house prices are more expensive today compared to 1952? In 1952, the average male wage, this was £452, 8 shillings and 1 pence. Wow. Meaning that the average Fife house was 3.43 times the average value of the wage per year. So per year, you were getting £452, 8 shillings and 1 pence. Today, the average home is 8.85 times the average wage. Now, that's based on information that we got previously, but I know it's probably around about 6.5, between 6.5 and 8 now. Depending on what the average wage is, depending how you look at the average wage. Because average wages can be done in certain sectors, but overall, apparently, according to the Scottish Government, our average wage in Fife is around about £30,000. So let us not forget the average mortgage payment in 1952, here it is, was £11 per month. Who'd like to go back to that mortgage payment? Hands up, £11 a month.
I would take that as well. People might have lost that bit actually, Jim, because we both clicked out there. Go and just say that part again. So
let's not forget that the average mortgage payment in 1952 was £11 per month, and the average Brit earned £34 per month, meaning 32.3% of the household income was going on mortgage payments, whilst nationally today, according to the Nationwide, it stands at 28%. It's less. We're actually paying less proportionally in our average salary today at 28% our average salary compared to 1952 it was 32.3% of the average salary. So for people out there saying it's like, it's like, oh, these mortgage payments are very, very high, they're not at all in comparison to other times in percentage terms or proportionally of your income. I know back in the credit crunch, just before the credit crunch, the average salary, the average mortgage payment was round about almost touching about 45% of your average salary.
But we've talked about this.
That tells you a lot, doesn't it?
It does, and we've talked about this in the past, didn't we, about regards to loan to value and property, etc. And in that credit crunch position where people were lending to individuals at 125% of the value of a house, so it's no wonder that the price for their payments were much, much higher, weren't they? Because they were really encouraging people at that time to consolidate credit and buy cars and have their holiday, and they kind of have now kind of feeling, wasn't it? And actually, that's right. That's what led to it, didn't it?
So here's the kicker. And it's cheaper now in real terms to buy a property in 2022 than it was in 1952. I mean, when you put it in that perspective, in real terms, the true spending power of money after taking into account wages and costs and inflation were more expensive, and some cheaper 70 years ago. I mean, that's an amazing thing to come up with. Where people actually think they're hard done by today, I'll be the older generation, moaning about the younger generation.
That would be well, I don't know about that.
The entitlement culture. People think they're hard done by today, but the reality is it's cheaper to buy a house now than it was in 1952.
Absolutely. I mean, when it was Golden Jubilee in 2002, 70% of people owned their own homes, with 11% of people privately renting and 19% renting from the council. So I mean that kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about the fact that the private letting services have actually assisted people in getting something.
Yeah. So that's taking to the point something in real terms. Real terms of true spending power of the money after taking into account wages, costs, inflation, as I said, were more expensive and some cheaper than 70 years ago. For example, in 1952, petrol was equivalent. Now, this is actually when in 1952. Here's petrol. Petrol was equivalent in today's inflation-adjusted prices to £1.02 a litre, and a pint of beer was equivalent to £2 today. Half a dozen eggs were £2.20. Cheddar cheese would have been £2.40 if it was adjusted in today's terms from 1952 per 500 grams. A basic radio, a basic radio would be 430 quid. But the reason that's come down so much is cost of manufacturing, isn't it? Cost of manufacturing and circuitry, semiconductors, microprocessors, being able to actually do that more efficiently, more cost effective. That's why the cost of radio. And a Hoover would be 530 quid. Now, that's no far off a Dyson, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's no far off a Dyson today. I'm not being, I'm not having a pop at anybody out there, but who pays £300 for a pair of hair straighteners? That doesn't get me at all. And I'm no one to talk about hair straighteners, but I'll be honest.
I am, and I would
300 quid for a pair of hair straighteners. I mean, really get the iron out and get the ironing board and just do it like that. Save yourself some money. Take the 300 quid and give it to the food bank. You don't need your hair straighteners for 300 quid.
Yeah,
give it to somebody that needs it.
It's a lot.
And a colour television in today's a 12-inch TV from 1952 in today's terms would actually cost £1,600. Again, it's all microprocessors and circuitry. It's done that.
Absolutely.
I always look at the classic example of how things have become more efficient in manufacturing and continued to keep the prices down because of that. The classic one for me is when I bought an Indesit washing machine for 199 quid in 1993. You can literally still buy a washing machine, if not better, for 199 quid in 2022.
It's true. It's mad. But if you even look at the cost of televisions now as well, because as you say, the mass production of them, the slimline way that they're built now, everything's like the microchipping, etc. You get so much more for your money, don't you?
Yeah. I'm going to bring up a wee chart here, and I'll just I like a wee graph. We always like a wee graph.
We do.
To accompany what we're doing. And I'll show you in real terms how this is all going. I'll get this here. Here it is here. Okay. So the average value of a Fife house since 1952. Here's some of the key points. So back to the property in the Queen's Reign has seen some amazing house price rises in the UK, yet the growth hasn't always been a constant upward direction, as we've had a couple of dips along the way. Here they are. So here's the dips. If you can see that, I'll maybe try and make that a wee bit bigger to take that out of the way so you can see the dates at the bottom. So 1952, 1,553. Then we had house price crash. We had house price crash in 1990. So you saw it was 46,730, and then it crashed in 1990. So it came to, I mean, but look, that's not a huge crash in the scope of things, is it?
No, it's not. It's not a mammoth when you think of the increase from 52 to that point.
Yeah, and the average value of the Fife property dropped from the 46,730 to that 38,701. See that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In 1996. So that's where it dropped. So that's where the crash came in and dropped all the way down, only for them to start rising again. Look at that meteoric rise.
Mm-hmm.
And then Fife saw another house price crash there between 2008 and 2009, where the average price dropped from 139 up here, which was the 139,789, to 119,172 in that year. So what else has changed about property in the housing market since the Queen came onto the throne? You can see the average price now, but look at this. This proved my point without a shadow of a doubt. That house prices will continue to rise and outperform inflation all the time. You can see that. You could smooth a curve from 1952 all the way around there and up there, and you've got a couple of jitters on the way, but overall it's pretty stable. Now, that's the average house price in Fife. But I'll be honest, I never did England, but England's market is, see this crash here in England. This is a lot more steeper.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to go up and down quite their volatility, whereas Scotland seems to be a lot more stable. And I think that's a lot to do with affordability and the fact that we can still afford, and our economy doesn't get hit as much. It's a bit more protected in terms of the English economy, because they're quite condensed. And in terms of sensitivity analysis, which I spoke about before, when there's small changes in anything, they get affected quite badly. Whereas we have changes in anything, it doesn't hit us as much. Unfortunately, we have to bring in with them. I mean, we know that because of the energy bills. It's not the default thing, energy. Hence the reason why we're having to pay astronomical amounts in line with everybody else and what they're paying as well. So that's a political thing, but energy is not devolved. And that's what causes the issue here.
I think what's really interesting as well, Jim, and we've spoken about this in past shows, when you look at that dip from 2009, when it went down by the 20,000, just bring that graph up again, Jim, if you're able to, for a wee second.
Yeah, I could do that.
So when we see that dip there, so from 139,789 down to the 119, okay, it's 20,000, but when we talked about it on a show a couple of weeks ago, and we spoke about the crash and actually that Fife property prices had increased by 16% in the last 12 months. Yeah. Even if there was a dip, unless you're planning to move in 12 months, it's not really going to affect you.
Yeah, I'm just seeing what that is in terms of the percentage for the dip. 119, 172. There's 20. So 20 divided by 139,789. That's a 14.7% dip.
Less than what it increased last year.
Yeah, 16.8 or something like that last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So in that 1 year, that dipped by that. So if that was ever to happen again, like a huge credit crunch, I mean, the credit crunch was catastrophic to a degree in terms of the banking and finance and availability of credit and stuff like that. So I wouldn't expect something that bad to happen again, because we've got mechanisms in place to stop that. That was the stress testing that came in about 2015, making sure that every single mortgage was stress tested at about 5% or 5.5%, before they actually got approved at the lower rate anyway. So everybody's stress tested in terms of mortgages because of that. So that basically, possibly might not happen as much as it would before. So I can't see that happen again. And it's like what you say, if we had a 16% drop, yeah, big deal. So property prices would only go back to what they were the year before. And the only people that would be affected in negative equity is the people that bought now, who would be moving for at least another 6 or 7 years anyway. And,
exactly.
and you know, there, every 6 or 7 years, and every single bit of that graph, property prices have gone up. Because you could take 6 years from 1952 and go to 1958, and it's probably gone up a wee bit there. You can see a smooth curve there. You can take 6 years from here, from 1990, and put it up to 1997, and then you're starting to come back up here. So it's almost evening out. And then you take 10 years from 1990 and then take it to 2000, you're up here now. You're up around about the 60,000 mark. So in the 10 years from that crash, where it happened from 1990 to year 2000, it went there. And then 10 years from the year 2000, right up to 2010. I mean, if you bought in year 2000, you'd be buying it at 60 grand. When after the crash had happened, 60 grand, 2010, you'd be double your money anyway.
You'd be double that
after the crash. 10 years after the crash, you still double your money if you bought 10 years before. So I mean, I don't understand how people actually think that you would get that in that situation. So I don't buy into it at all. Don't buy into it at all.
I thought it was useful to kind of share that example.
Key here is, though, only in 1952, only 32% of people owned their own home, whilst 50%, here it is, 50% actually rented from a private landlord, and 18% rented a council house. That's amazing statistics. And people say that private landlords are taking over right now, but by the time the Silver Jubilee came along in 1977, 56% of people owned their own home. That's gone up from 32 in 1952. 12% of people privately rented. That dropped from 50 to 12%. No idea what happened there. I'll wait to find out why that was the case. And 32% were renting from the council, which was almost double in that time.
Wait to see when we get to Golden Jubilee, as I said earlier.
Golden Jubilee, wow. 70% owned their own home. That's up. That's more than double from 1952. 11% were renting privately. That's almost a 20% of what it was in 1952. And 17% rented from the council, which was round about the same figure anyway, what it was in 1952. So nothing really changed in terms of that. And today, right, so we'll fast forward from the Golden Jubilee now, we'll fast forward to 2022, which is the Platinum Jubilee. 63% of people own their own home today. That's from 32% in 1952. So that's double. 20% of people privately rent. That's still less than half what it was in 1952. And 17% actually rent from the council. So that's kind of similar, isn't it?
It's almost go back to square one with the rental from the council, isn't it?
So council's actually been pretty stable in terms of their stock ownership, in terms of what they're doing. There must have been a point where 1980s was the big sell-off, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The council housing sell-off. And that's probably the council houses at that point probably would have been a lot more, and then they were basically forced to sell off, weren't they? 32% was rented from the council in 1977, and then the 80s came along, and it was the privatised the council housing sector, and then that dropped from 32 to what it is today, which is 17, which is literally just half. So what's the conclusion here, Perrie?
I think to conclude, as we look forward, it'll be interesting to see what the next 70 years is going to look like. But I'm sure the property markets from today will be very different then. I guess for me, it'll be somebody else's problem but in regards to what might happen there. But it's interesting to see, if those trends continue, I think it's still going to be a healthy position for us all to be in regards to owning property and leaving legacy. Yeah.
I mean, for anybody that's a Rightmove fan, because we looked at Rightmove statistics as well, the average Fife terraced home in 1952 was worth £1,223. Semi-detached property was actually could be bought for an average of £1,651. I mean, again, that's hardly anything, isn't it? In comparison. So, you know, the reality is, I think overall, property is still a great investment. Property is, I mean, we all read it. It's only an investment if you buy an additional one, isn't it? If you buy an additional one and rent it or use it as service accommodation for tourism or anything like that, that's the only reason it's an investment. If it's in your house, it's proportionately the same anyway, because it's just your house. You live in it. It's not bought as an investment, but it's bought as a vehicle to provide for your family at that point in time with a roof over their head, and then use it as a stepping stone to upgrade to another house later on. That's the only way. I mean, it literally is the property ladder, isn't it?
It is a ladder, and I think what it does as well, though, is that, you know, for us oldies who do only just have the one, I'm not applying that to you, obviously, Jim, but it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity, though, for us to help our families, isn't it, going forward? You know, there's that, you know, you can draw down on your property, you can help your own family get on the property ladder, because there isn't that social housing available for them. So, you know, there is a situation where you do need to help them and achieve that for them, whether that be setting them up in a private or whether they're setting them up in an ownership. So it does allow you to be able to do that as well.
That's a really good point, actually, because when I would 100% agree with that, because all the years that we've built up to a bigger house, we know we're going to downsize to almost something a third of the price. But then we've paid off our mortgage as well. So therefore, we've got that huge amount of equity left, which is tax-free. And then essentially you can pass that on to your kids and you could help them get started as well. So you know, if you look at it like that, it's kind of an investment, isn't it?
It is. I certainly kind of treated it like that way until I got involved with property and with yourself. That was always my mindset of where I was going. It was about how I would help my family when they were ready.
Good. Anything to finalise and just conclude there, and we'll just finish off?
I think for me, there's some real traction that we've seen there. And I think that traction, we're still seeing that go. So I think the peace of mind thing is that actually as a homeowner, I'm comfortable that I don't need to panic, and actually look forward to what my investment will look like in years to come.
I think that's a good point, actually. You know, there is you'd use the right word there, which was panic, which is which a lot of people don't understand, and they just continually listen to the news and they take that in, and then they panic because they're just believing what the news is telling them. But when you look at the numbers that are here and you look at all the information we've provided on previous shows that we do, you know, there's no much to panic about at all. You know, if you've done your planning and you know your budgets and you know where you are, and you know if certain prices go up, if that goes up, if this goes up, your mortgage is secure because it's maybe fixed, and you've made these extrapolations. In other words, you know, if petrol went up to X amount, another 20%, and I was paying £2,000 a year for my petrol bill, how would another £400 on top of my £2,000 if it went up 20% affect me? And what is £400? So £400 divided by 12 months effectively is round about what, 36 £40 a month or something like that. You know, round about that level, £36 a month, £30 a month. So an extra £30 a month. Wait a minute, that's just £1 a day. So if petrol prices went up by 20% over the year, that'll only affect me by £1 a day if I was only spending £2,000 a year on my petrol. And can I afford £1 a day? Yeah, I could afford £1 a day. But when you put it in bigger terms, you get a bit frightened, don't you? You panic.
You do.
Yeah. And then you roll it into everything else.
Yeah, they don't just do it in one item, though. It's not just petrol, it's food, it's your house, it's your tax.
Well, you know what to do.
They're doing all the multipliers, and then actually becomes...
Go straight to your bank statement. You go straight to your bank statement. You tally it all up. You say, this is what I spend at Sainsbury's, this is what I spend at Tesco's, this is what I spend a year on food, okay? And then divide that by, you know, if food prices went up 10%, say I was spending 10 grand a year on food. If they went up 10%, there's £1,000. £1,000 divided by 52 is 20 quid a week. 20 quid a week divided by 7 every day is £3 a day. So there's the £1 for petrol, there's the £3 a day for food. And then, you know, can I find £4 a day to save? Absolutely. can I find £4 a day to make extra? Can I make an extra £4 a day? Can I make an extra £5 a day? Maybe a £10 a day? And that all mounts up. So that covers all the costs. So there's a way. We might actually do a show on budgeting at some point in time. That might actually be quite a good show.
We've already started another show.
Yeah, we've started another. We've gone into budgeting. We've gone on a show on budgeting. Let's leave it there.
My final words are: don't panic. Everything's going to be good.
Yeah, I think that's the case. Okay, let's finish off there, and it's goodbye from her.
And from him. Take care.
See you later, folks. Bye-bye.